And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley. What is up, everyone? Welcome to, I'm going to call this Wes and Robert Change the World today. Let's just have different titles until we actually decide on a title.
Works for me.
Yeah, this is Shaping Success Morning Coffee is kind of what it's been for a while. Robert and I are working on co-hosting, so this is going to be a Monday, Wednesday thing that we're doing. We're doing it live on TikTok right now. You can see us here, so thanks for hanging out. Make sure that you follow both of us there. And then you get to kind of hang out with us. You can go to Shaping Success with Wes Tankersley, subscribe to the YouTube channel, pick it up there, Facebook, Twitter. It's pretty much live in a lot of places, but we just recently started doing it here on TikTok because we figured out a way to make it work. So there you go.
Perfect.
Good morning, Robert. What's going on in the great Lone Star State?
Well, we're, basically in the 90s and humid as hell. So it's pretty much normal as we go, subtropics. Good morning, Nikki, Joanne, everybody.
You mean there's a reason why you're like sweltering, sweating almost every single morning?
Yeah, and incidentally, this is about an hour after the run.
Oh yeah. Oh, so you got a little bit of a break.
I've actually cooled down. See, my hair is not completely matted.
Yeah.
But I've showered and all that. But it just takes such a long time to cool down. It really does.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that works out for you. I'm sure it's like an adrenaline rush, which wakes you up pretty easily in the morning, and you go not easily. Nothing's easy about getting up early and going and running. How many miles do you do a day?
Between 2 and 3. It just depends on how my body's feeling.
I can't imagine doing more than one. I can't imagine doing one. I wake up in the morning, I hit some of that coffee, and then I've recently started drinking this stuff. It's called Magic Mind. It's kind of like I don't know. They don't say it's a greens drink, but it's like green. Like, so you think about it as green, and you take it as a supplement, like with your coffee. And it's crazy because coffee does not keep me going. I was explaining that to you a little bit before, the fact that coffee actually, like, I could drink like 5 cups and I got to drink one more, and it's just not enough. And then you have Red Bull and then you, like, all this unhealthy stuff, I'm sure. But this is pretty healthy. It's got some caffeine and it's pretty good. So I like to take one of these every morning. They reach out to me and they want to give me a coupon code. So that's how easy it is. Pretty good stuff. And if you guys want to catch that Magic Mind, check it out. You can use code WES20 at magicmind.com/WES20. Get a discount. Pretty good stuff. So
that works.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some of it because I like it, and they've given me a month's supply. So, or not a month, well, 6 months supply. So they're going to send me every 30 days. They'll send me 30 bottles, which is pretty cool.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So we're talking about words, and it's interesting. We had a conversation on Monday. We talked a little bit. I don't know. It wasn't Monday. We didn't. You and I have been talking back and forth about this COVID thing because it was kind of funny. I knew that I had to talk to you a little bit about. I didn't know if you wanted me to post it or not. It was the number one thing on Opus, and it was funny how we just kind of said that COVID was kind of like a cold, and it's hilarious to me. Like, and we talked about it, I'm like, okay. And you're like, yep, post it. So I posted it, and I knew what the reactions were going to be. Like, I knew what they were coming. And this kind of leads into our chapter about words, because there's so many different things that they can do for you. Right. And we talked about what was the cost of lies last week, or what was it? Yeah. So we were talking about the cost of lies and like how the media talks and tells you these things, and you listen, but a lot of them are lies and things like that, and how these lies that people have had. Nikki says she posted it's on YouTube as well, but we talked about these lies of how we are told these things and what the media says and how we believe those types of things, and how it just, I don't know, there's just so much to this fake media stuff that we start to believe the things that we hear. If it's said enough, we believe it. And that's kind of where these words options come in, right?
Yeah. And if we can kind of start, I guess, from the words, and in the book, I use the word yes and no, because that's where some of the studies are done and what it does to your system, right? What your nervous system does when you hear the word no. But it's easier if we just do a word that will be more a little bit more toxic for you and I, and the word is old.
Yep.
Okay. Well, because it has a certain connotation to it. If we say young, it has a certain connotation to it. But the reality behind the word is just a word old.
Right.
And if you accept that you're old, then you're old and
Mm-hmm.
all the things that are with it. Or you just say age is just a number, it doesn't matter. But you begin to realize how it frames you in every discussion you have. For example, we said COVID is a bad cold.
Right.
Well, according to Yale, according Yale Medicine, according to CDC, it's not. I didn't make this up. I didn't learn my microbiology and immunology myself. I basically do research, and the point about being an academic is I look at anything. For example, there was something that came out and said everybody needs to take one day off because it really improves the way they live their life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only problem I had with it was I couldn't find the research.
Right.
Every time that I started trying to track it down, follow the footnotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't actually find the research that supported what they said. Sounded like a great idea, but again, let me see the research. And is it research with 24 college students? Is it research across 50,000? This is one thing about being an academic and a person that does studies is I actually look at how meaningful the data is.
Right.
And so you begin to look, and somebody said, COVID is a bad cold. Wall Street Journal article this morning,
Mm-hmm.
editorial, right? It being a very bad cold that was genetically engineered. And one of our commentary people made that comment.
Right.
Common bad cold plus genetic engineering equals, bad stuff.
Right.
The point is, was it genetically engineered? I don't know. That's not my field.
Yeah.
I don't do genetics.
Mm-hmm.
So if a geneticist or a group of geneticists wants to show me the research where it's been peer reviewed and it says that it was genetically altered, then I'll believe them,
Right.
right? But show me the peer reviewed research. There's a reason we have peer reviewed research. Okay. It may be siloed, and we all understand that peer review means siloed, meaning the group of people all kind of like mind look at it. But the point is they look at it to keep integrity intact, right? They do it so that the words mean something,
Yeah.
right? Not just the way we look at it. For example, when we say old, if I say old, hey Wes, you're old, or if I
Yep.
said, hey Wes, you're vintage, and all of a sudden Wes goes vintage. Oh, I kind of like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But I mean, it's all of that, this pejorative thing that we pick up with words and ideas and concepts. And my point to people is I appreciate your opinion, but I'm actually not giving you an opinion. I
Yeah.
didn't write a book with my opinion in it.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the book with my experiences in it and with the research in it. Okay. So, in other words, I actually experienced it. And one of the really cool things was a friend of mine had made this comment. She said, people have a bunch of opinions. And I said, thank God I didn't learn to fly with a flight instructor whose opinions I needed to heed.
Right.
It wasn't his opinions that mattered. What was the thing that mattered? The fact that he could fly a plane and that he
Yep.
could teach me to fly the plane and that I could mimic and do whatever he did and the plane didn't crash. So empirically you can say, oh, okay, well, geez, you know how to fly a plane. Shocker, it doesn't come out of the sky. But most of our opinions are not constructed off of experience. They're not constructed off of reality. They don't test reality. They're just opinions.
Well, it's
Like,
all subjective. You think about it like you calling me old, not that you called me, but
right,
like that subject, like you're just looking at me and you're like, oh, he's got gray in his beard, he's got this, he's got that, blah, blah, blah. That automatically makes him old. I had someone
right,
yesterday tell me that I look super young and they can't believe that I've been through the things that I've been through, having 2 degrees and changing tires for 11 years and all this stuff. And it's like, it
right.
really is in the eye of the beholder. And so if you look at your grandfather and you know that he's old, like my dad, when he was a grandfather, was like my age. So he's pretty young for a grandfather. It's really subjective to what that looks like. And this whole COVID thing is funny because some people came back with, well, a cold wouldn't have took my best friend or this or that, like talking about that thing. And like the reality of this whole situation is that we I remember when COVID came out and there was all this data that it's going to kill everyone and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then when people say it's like the flu or it's like this or it's like that, you would get thrown off, and you'd start to think that way. It's a negative thing. You're going to die. You're going to die, because everyone is like trying to be fear mongering and tell you, hey, you're going to die. And the reality of it is if you take those numbers, which all the data is coming out now, whether you believe it or not, maybe your family member died from COVID or from the virus or whatever. But the underlying conditions that killed these people were not just COVID. Like, there was something else to it that killed them. And so we're not looking into that. It didn't kill kids. It killed, maybe it killed one kid, right? But that could have been an underlying condition. And that's the thing. Like, there's so many people who are not really paying attention to the actual underlying conditions and the things that there were, because just like my grandfather is old, subjective. He's 43, he's 63, he's 98, he's whatever what you think old is. It's the same thing with that. Like, they died because they were healthy. And you're like, okay, your idea of what healthy is a lot different than what my idea of healthy is. And there are all these underlying conditions that cause this death. And when you compare them to all the other things, it wasn't as bad as they made it out to be, but they were trying to keep you stuck in one place and they didn't know what to do.
And it's funny too, because again, I'm old enough to have been going around the maypole a couple of times. So in the 80s, they actually came up with a study that said hamburgers shorten your life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I was like, oh, okay. And what happens and I remember my girlfriend's mother, who took a drug to basically keep her pregnancy, that had the nasty side effect they knew decades later made her sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Not the mother, the child sterile.
Yeah.
And so you begin to ask the question, which is, listen, give things time. I have no problem with people rushing out to save people's life. No problem whatsoever. But can we go ahead and realize that it's going to take a lot of study years afterwards for us to get to the point to say, oh, okay, we think we kind of have a hold on how things are. We think we have an idea what this thing looked like. This is really what the causes are. And it's always interesting because everything gets headlines when it's coming out. But 10 years later, when it's refuted, it doesn't get any headlines.
Right.
10 years later, when the actual data comes out, it's all that's saying is I always like to answer things like this. Based upon our current knowledge, this is what we think.
Yep.
Well, were you absolutely certain? The hell no, I'm not absolutely certain. Here's what I'm certain of. Things like gravity, real certain of gravity. Real certain.
Not flying off the ground.
Right. But yeah, that's, other than that, you begin to realize that give things time. Because as we begin to understand things better, right? For example, 100 years ago, women didn't have children, high-risk pregnancies in their 40s at all, because it had all kinds of, problems with it. The reality is we do know that that is higher risk, but that doesn't stop them. It really doesn't stop them. They have healthy children, all that kind of stuff. But that's a process of learning. It takes time. It's not overnight. And a lot of times we as the public are demanding way too much out of the professionals, like, give us an answer.
Right.
And to be honest with you, they don't have one. And so they're going to throw something out and they're going to do it in the best mind that they have at the moment, which says, here's what I think you should do because this makes sense. And then we hyper criticize them. And I'm like, hold on a second. Given what you gave them, which is about 2 minutes of information, you said, save me. And they gave you the best they had. So I'm sensitive to both sides of the argument, of any of these arguments, especially fresh into them, really, really sensitive to the fact that not everybody has the data. They just don't. So be patient with the situation.
I gotta apologize for the feed if I've got static. Nikki says I got static on the YouTube feed, but not a whole lot we can do other than disconnect, and we're not going to do that right now. So, but thanks for letting us know. If you guys haven't tuned in before, this is Robert Watson. We're doing this live on TikTok for the first time. AJ hopped in here. This is Ars Victorious, his book. We're talking about words and how they have a lot of meaning. And, recent episode we talked a little bit about COVID being kind of a cold, and it's interesting how people kind of react to that situation, and words are the same way. Kind of jumping into more of what the book said, though, more of like positivity and negativity, right? Like, so we've talked about
Mhm.
this a lot of times where if you have that negative connotation in your life, when you tell yourself you're fat, when you tell yourself you're ugly, when you tell yourself, like these things that you see, because it's all subjective based on what you see, like that
Right.
you're old, like we talked about, you have this hit in your head, was it like a dopamine hit? Is that what it was talking about in the book? But like
Yeah.
you have this dopamine hit that raises or lowers the way that you think about yourself. And the more you say it, the worse it
Hmm.
becomes. So it takes time training yourself. And I'll tell you, I'm a big advocate for this because I've done it myself. Like I was very negative about myself my whole life. And then for the last 4 or 5 years, I've realized that that's not making anything better for me. And,
Hmm.
and it is a process. And I'm sure that it was never an exact science for you either, Robert, but doing that is something that you have to make. You have to make the choice to be more positive than negative. And it's easier to be negative than positive. But the
Yeah.
results of that is much better. It just takes for me, like it's taken a long time to still get that out of my head. I still get in those days where I have those funks where I'm just like pissed off at the world because of the way that it's treating me. But it's really me making it happen for myself instead of, like I make it more than what it actually really is.
Yeah, we have control over our inputs to the system, and we have control over our attitude. And the building blocks of attitude are the words we say to ourselves.
Right.
I have a friend who I absolutely adore, and she has a bunch of loaded words. Like relationship is loaded for her, love is loaded for her. These are words that she's not comfortable with because they have loaded meaning. Okay.
Right.
And I initially was thinking, wow, she's overly sensitive to words. And then I flipped it around and said, hold on a second. Maybe I should be more sensitive to words having meaning, right?
Right.
And I shouldn't be as loosey goosey with words as I am, because that I look at them and they don't have the same kind of meaning. They have a nice, softer, sweeter meaning. So I can throw them out and use them, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe
Yep.
I should think about the way I use words too. And that's what I always try to do is I try to put myself in a place of empathy where I flip myself around and say, oh, okay. Now you don't want to get too many loaded words or then you have an inability to communicate, right? Because every word is supposedly loaded. Every word is not loaded, but they do have, depending on where you come from, like I said, going back to that old versus vintage, right?
Yep.
Like I think the standard for vintage is 50 years, right?
I'm
No,
getting there.
I'm serious. Like
I, I'm
a car can't be, yeah,
I'm
you're
getting
almost at
there.
vintage.
I'm working on it.
I am definitely vintage. And Nikki, yes, if eating hamburgers is wrong, then I don't want to be right either. But again, that's it's. I love to take these snapshots when I'm on Instagram or TikTok. I'll take snapshots of something that they say is research, right? A study says. So I'll
Yeah.
take a snapshot of it and then I'll go research it. I have to break this to people, Instagram and TikTok. 9 out of 10 times, they're actually full of crap.
Yeah.
There isn't any study or the new study that they say is 30 years old.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So
and I
be
remember sitting in
careful.
college the first time reading a study that someone had stated something and then hearing the same thing. Like there was two that really stand out to me. Like, um, Tipper Gore, if you guys are
Right.
in that age, she wrote about how like rap music was making people violent, right? Because it sings a lot about violence or whatever. But her thing that she said was, why was the guy humming like Wild Thing? And it's like that's not about something violent. I mean, well, it could be violent, but that's not
Yeah.
what we're talking about. It's not um, "Fuck the Police" by NWA, right? Like it's not like that's what that was. But they're talking about this violence being related to rap music, and so they go out and they go and they find, like you said, 20 college students, and what do you do when you listen to this song? What does it make you want to do? And then all of a sudden they've made this correlation and it's okay. And then there was another one that said, well, people who eat ice cream are more likely to be like shoplifters, And they went out and they did a correlation study on 20 people. And like, your group is so small. So anyone can do a study. Anyone can
Right.
make up this number. And when you don't have the data, and I think that that's the big thing that we don't see, is anyone can say anything. And when Fauci is telling you to wear a mask, and we're going to go back to the COVID thing, but when Fauci is going to masks and saying that this works, but knowing that the particles are so small that they can get through the mask that you're telling us that we should wear, these crappy, well, something's better than nothing. Well, in reality, it's not. And all the proof is out now. That's the same thing with anything in your life. You have to sit there and think about it.
There was an interesting, Harvard is running a longitudinal study. And that we know that the kind of the blue ribbon for everything is longitudinal studies, because basically what it is not only do we study something, but we study it over time.
Right.
So that in case of Harvard, Harvard's been running this since the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
So you're at about 90 years now. So you're really starting to get some decent data, right? So one of the things they came to the conclusion about longevity in life was, which is kind of interesting, is that you should probably have a few extra pounds,
Mm-hmm.
not be on the skinny side. So if your base weight's supposed to be 145, being 150 is actually, in their data, is actually suggests that you have better longevity with a couple extra pounds.
Right.
Now, is that because you're happier, or is that because a couple extra pounds works for metabolisms? They don't know that. All they're doing is they're telling you that over 90 years they've looked at this, and the people that have a couple extra pounds, that just like you said, from the correlation standpoint, is what is that actually correlated to?
Right.
All it basically says is over the 90 years, people with a couple extra pounds have lived longer. But why?
Yeah.
You know,
Which is, I
still
mean,
gotta
and the
figure
thing
that
about
out.
that is, like, if you start to think about it, like, you could probably come to some conclusion, but if there's no correlation, then there isn't really it. Like, I think of, like, my
Right.
thought process on that from a body standpoint is like, okay, so if it gets really cold in the winter and you have a little bit of body fat on you and the other guy doesn't, who's going to have more? Their body's going to have more to eat, right?
Sure.
Go into a cold
Exactly.
thing. I mean, that's really what it is. So,
But one
kind of
thing
a,
I went over this thing with a friend, back to your words thing, to finish, to kind of loop in this thing, is basically I conclude every day by talking to her, and I simply say, you've had a good day, right?
yep,
And what it does to you, it actually makes you go back on your day and ask the question, which is, yeah, you had some bumps and bruises, but in the end, did you have a good day? And what happens is if you do that every day over time, what are you saying to yourself?
right,
If I have a bunch of good days, it leads to a bunch of good weeks, which lead to a bunch of good months, which then ask you, how are you doing? I'm doing pretty good. Why?
yeah,
I have a pretty good life. Why? Because I have a bunch of good days. It's
right.
that simple.
And it's amazing because you think about, like, we camp on the things. It's funny. We talked about ice cream. We've got a new follower here, Liquid Garbage. He says that ice cream people who eat ice cream are atrocities. They do commit the most crimes. And then he sent us some ice cream. But
There you go.
it's kind of funny. I was thinking about that as you're saying that. I'm thinking about yesterday. Like, I had a really good day as far as sales go. Like, I completed, 4 out of 5 sales calls that I had. I closed 4 out of 5, and the other one it ended up being 6 because when I was at one person's house, they called and they said, "Hey, do you want to walk across the street and go sell something else to someone else?" So I walk across the street and get another sale. But I also had a customer who I've worked with for a long time who this is the second time, like, the company that's making this product for him has screwed it up 2 times now. This is the second time. They're in there reinstalling because they had to remake this whole order, which was not a small order by any means. And it's a whole house. And it just, like, it was a really crazy thing. I did really well yesterday for sales, but you know what my brain camped on was
Mhm.
that guy, how I'm going to fix that situation. What is but when you said that, I had to think about it. I had to think, well, there was so many good things that happened yesterday. Why am I letting this one bad thing bother me as much as it does. And that's as simple as it is. Like when you go to bed, that's a great way to think about it. What are the good things? What are you thankful for? And whether you believe in God or whether you pray to someone, like that's one thing to think about. Like be thankful for that. Have that kind of like Thanksgiving moment, I guess, at the end of the day. And you probably wake up in the morning in a better mood.
Well, there's, of course, this study is pretty simple. I think that was like 20,000 people. And they basically said that you can't occupy the space of gratitude and anxiety at the same time.
Yeah.
It's neurologically impossible. You
Yeah.
cannot be grateful and anxious at the same time. And then
Yeah.
you just kind of going, yeah, I can't imagine being grateful and anxious at the same time.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And so, yeah, that's how you build it. And so the building blocks of those feelings of anxiousness and gratitude and happiness and sadness and positivity and negativity are words.
Yep. Exactly.
So words we're saying to ourselves. Yep.
Yep. And how we talk to ourselves. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Very good conversation. I'm excited to continue doing this. We'll be back next week. Monday, we talk a little bit more about like topics. We talked about pressure versus stress on last Monday, and we're working on the next one. But it's amazing to kind of dissect these things and be able to talk back and forth about it. And I appreciate, you doing this with me, and it's exciting to see where it's going.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Even though I have to get up and run at 3:30 in the morning.
It's the sacrifices you make for me. I appreciate you.
No, it's the sacrifices I make to get up and do this, because I mean it really does have a positive impact on my day too,
Yeah.
right? Not only do I get up a little bit earlier, but what do I inject into my day?
Yep.
A lot of positivity. So I'm pretty thrilled.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for hanging out with us. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you follow us on TikTok to catch these lives. They're 2 days a week. We're doing a Monday and Wednesday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, which is 7 o'clock Eastern Time. I'll give you that. You can figure out all the other time zones if you want. Those are kind of the big ones. And until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.